According to psychology, one of the most dangerous patterns in overthinkers is this. Their entire emotional state becomes dependent on how someone else responds to them, and over time, it slowly begins to destroy their sense of self. It's not their job, not their environment, not even their own internal stability, but one person's tone, one message, one delay in response can completely shift how they feel about themselves and the world around them. Here's how it happens. Overthinkers don't just interact with people, they study them. They become highly sensitive to emotional cues that most people completely ignore. A delayed text, a shorter reply, a missing emoji, a slight change in tone, these are invisible to most people, but to an overthinker they feel significant, almost like signals pointing toward rejection. And the moment something feels different, their mind starts to spiral. Did I say something wrong? Are they upset with me? Are they losing interest? Or are they talking to someone else? What begins as a small moment of uncertainty quickly turns into a full emotional narrative built entirely in their mind. The brain of an overthinker is often in a state of hyper-attunement, meaning it is constantly scanning for emotional shifts in others. Psychologically, this is the mind trying to protect connection, to prevent rejection before it happens. But the problem is that neutral behavior gets misinterpreted as emotional danger. The nervous system reacts as if something is wrong, even when nothing has changed. Heart rate increases, thoughts speed up, and anxiety begins to fill in every gap of uncertainty. At this point, the overthinker is no longer responding to reality, but to interpretation. And that interpretation often becomes darker than the truth. They begin to assume rejection before it even exists, and then unconsciously change their behavior, over-explaining, double-texting, seeking reassurance, or pulling away first to avoid being hurt later. And this is where the real damage happens. They are not only reading the other person, they are also reading themselves out of the relationship. They start to create problems that were never there, building emotional scenarios based on fear rather than fact. In psychology, this is closely related to emotional dysregulation in attachment, where a person's sense of safety becomes externally regulated instead of internally stable. When someone's behavior determines your emotional state, your nervous system stops feeling secure on its own. Instead, it begins to depend on constant external validation to feel okay. And the irony is that this pattern often produces the very outcome they fear the most. Because when someone becomes emotionally reactive, overly sensitive, or overly dependent on reassurance, it can push the other person away. Not because they don't care, but because the dynamic becomes overwhelming. So the overthinker ends up caught in a cycle, trying harder to prevent abandonment while unintentionally increasing the chances of it happening. This is not a flaw in character, but a pattern of emotional regulation that has become misaligned. And the most important realization is this: when your peace depends on someone else's behavior, you slowly lose access to your own emotional stability. You stop responding to reality and start reacting to fear. And over time, you don't just risk losing the relationship, you risk losing yourself inside it,